As the honored guest of President Eisenhower, he thinks he is making communism respectable.
Away from intransigence and suspicion and towards practical dealing with the communists.
Stones and rotten eggs and angry placards from Hungarian and other refugees in several cities.
I'm concerned that maybe someone with a high-powered rifle with a telescope sights might knock them off.
As long as we're talking, we're not shooting.
Mr. Khrushchev arrives in the United States next Tuesday, and roving report has asked Patrick O'Donovan, the London Observer's staff correspondent in Washington, to find out what Americans are thinking on the eve of this great event.
It is accepted here that there has been, on the initiative of President Eisenhower, a major shift in American foreign policy, away from intransigence and suspicion and towards some sort of really practical dealing with the communists. But perhaps more remarkable has been the shift in American public opinion. Only a few months ago, it would have been quite impossible. And yet today, probably an overwhelming majority of Americans welcome the idea that Mr. Khrushchev should visit this city of Washington and half a dozen other ones in the United States.
Khrushchev welcomes it too. He's been working towards the visit for a long time, ever since he came to Britain in 1956 with Marshal Bulganin, now in disgrace. Khrushchev believes that high-level visits, especially to Britain and America, help to enhance Russia's prestige and to strengthen his own position at home. As the honored guest of President Eisenhower, he thinks he is making communism respectable. In January, he sent his deputy, Anastas Mikoyan, to America. This was a huge success. Mikoyan was cheered and feted, did a comedy act with Jerry Lewis in Hollywood, and won the hearts of American businessmen with his wisecracks and self-assurance. The American people had seen that a Russian leader could be human. There were, of course, setbacks, stones and rotten eggs and angry placards from Hungarian and other refugees in several cities, a foretaste of what might await Khrushchev. This summer, Vice President Nixon brought back from Russia two major impressions. First, that the American government had underestimated the vitality and strength of the Russian people and their faith in communism. Second, that Khrushchev on his side was dangerously belittling the United States, both its economic power and its workers' liking for their form of democracy. So the American government completed its change of policy. But do the people agree with it? To find out, Patrick O'Donovan went to the little town of St. Charles near Chicago, where he asked the mayor what he thought of the Khrushchev visit.
Well, I believe we should take advantage of every opportunity we have to show the world our democratic way of life in the United States of America. I believe we should show them our homes, our schools, our churches, show them how we resolve our differences of opinions, and then proceed with a united front to accomplish our objectives. I also think we should show them how we travel freely from city to city, from state to state, and how the boundaries between the United States and Canada and between the United States and Mexico are not guarded by forts or soldiers.
Mr. Mayor, would you accept Mr. Khrushchev as a guest in your city of St. Charles?
I believe we would.
How do you think your citizens would react?
Well, that I would have to wait and see.
The citizens of this prosperous and staunchly Republican place were out on their annual picnic. Hot dogs and cokes and pretty girls in boats. It was just the American way of life that Khrushchev ought to see, and perhaps not so very different from how Russian villagers enjoy themselves. O'Donovan talked to them.
Sir, I wonder if you'd give me your view of the invitation to Mr. Khrushchev to visit America.
The invitation issued to Mr. Khrushchev? Well, I think if Mr. Khrushchev and Russia are sincere about wanting world peace, they will gladly accept that invitation and come and show by their action and behavior in this country just what their attitudes actually are. Just the way I believe Eisenhower is doing by going over to Russia and showing the American people that we are a positive nation and willing to take positive action to try to establish a lasting peace in this world. Those are my honest opinions.
What do you think of this Khrushchev visit?
Well, all in all, I think it's a very good thing. Probably one of the best things that could happen to the Western democracies. Now, I don't know how many are familiar with George Kennan's thesis. He's an American political scientist. But he holds that the real difference between the Soviet system and the Western systems as a whole is the lack of knowledge and any conception whatsoever of the West that the Russian leaders hold. Now, unless we can make headway with the Russian leaders to show them our side of the picture, and that's the real difference, actually, more than military might, so forth and so on, I think those are secondary questions that can be handled over the board, so to speak. But they don't have any conception, I believe, of our way of life. I mean, how the average American lives, how he thinks, how the average Briton lives, and how he thinks. And if we can show them more and more of this is the way that change has to come in the Soviet Union from the top, not from the bottom.
Well, I'm primarily concerned with the safety of Khrushchev when he comes to this country. He's got quite a few people over here that were formerly refugees from Russia, and I'm concerned that maybe someone with a high-powered rifle with a telescope sights might knock him off. And then we've got a war on our hands.
Well, I think it's very good in that we're showing our friendliness to foreign countries, but I think it's too bad in the fact that undoubtedly this will be used as propaganda.
I think his visit over here would be is a very good idea. After all, Nixon had a chance to go over there and see what it was like. And from what I know, he has different ideas of what the United States is like and how our government is run. And I think his visit over here would give him a better idea of what the average person in the United States is like and what our government is really like.
Well, I think it's very wonderful. I think it's real good that the President Eisenhower can go over there and Khrushchev's come over here.
Well, personally, I think that will be a good thing for America and for Khrushchev, too. I believe the Russian people should know more about the American people. And I think by him coming over here, he'll see a lot of things that he didn't know we had before. And it'll give the Russians a good idea of what we can do and what our potential is in America.
What do you think of this Khrushchev invitation?
I really don't know anything about it.
I think it's a good neighbor policy. And I think if we can't beat them, join them.
Khrushchev's route across America is based on what he himself asked to see. 2 days in Washington, 2 in New York, by air to California, then back via the farmlands of Iowa and the factories of Pittsburgh to Washington again for serious talks with the president. 13 days in all. Khrushchev is bringing his wife and family with him to America. When Khrushchev arrives in Washington, Ike will be at the airport himself to greet him, a considerable gesture seeing that Khrushchev is not head of state. He will be shown the Capitol like any of these tourists. He'll speak at a press lunch, but he will not address Congress, a privilege usually granted to visiting world statesmen. This is because many congressmen are taking a moral stand against the visit. O'Donovan talked to some of them. Senator Humphrey, a Democrat from Minnesota, he found quite favorable.
Senator Humphrey, do you think the president was wise to ask Mr. Khrushchev to visit the United States?
In the main, I think this was a good decision. The president has a great responsibility for the peace and security, not only of our country, but of other countries of the world, in fact. And this visit could lend itself to constructive purposes. I support the president's decision.
What do you think that the West can really expect out of such a visit?
First, we ought not to expect too much. There is a tendency in modern affairs to treat these difficulties and these basic differences between societies and systems of social organization as if they were superficial. The truth is that the differences between the free world and the communist area are basic and fundamental. And I doubt that one short visit will do much to erase those differences. However, it could provide an opportunity for a modest relief of tension. It also could open up a series of conferences between the East and the West. I personally believe that we will be faced with that kind of a situation. And rather than to run away from it, we ought to accept it and prepare ourselves to constantly negotiate and to talk and to attempt to at least find ways to press our point, to press the policies that we believe are desirable and lend themselves to a world of tranquility and freedom.
In your heart, Senator, do you believe that any sort of accommodation is possible with contemporary communism?
Well, if you mean by accommodation just to live and let live, no. because I think that will lend itself towards a kind of slow erosion of our position by the constant pressure of communist imperialism. We need to remember that the current or the contemporary Soviet and communist leaders are not only ideological communists, but they're extreme nationalists in a sense. They're imperialists, and they will keep biting away, nibbling away at our position. Now, that's if you just take coexistence at face value. But if you make it competitive coexistence, if you really compete, if you really realize that this struggle is across the board, military, economic, cultural, ideological, a struggle of education, trade, science, and you're prepared to really mobilize and compete, I think we can gain from this sort of thing. In the long run, I believe we will inch towards peace and understanding without losing our rights or principles. I think there is a greater opportunity for a change in the Soviet Union towards liberalization than there is the possibility of communization of the rest of the world.
A very different reaction came from Senator Dodd, a right-wing Democrat from Connecticut. He's a Roman Catholic and has been leading the anti-Khrushchev campaign in Congress.
Senator Dodd, I understand that you very much disapprove of the idea of having Mr. Khrushchev visit this country.
Yes, I do. You want to know why? Because I think it will be harmful to us, not only the people of the United States, but the people of the entire free world. I think the people of the captive nations will be discouraged. I think our friends who are uncommitted in the world will be discouraged and disillusioned. I think our own people will be softened up and confused and will not have the will and the strength to resist the forces of aggressive communism in the world.
What sort of proportion do you think of your fellow citizens feel in the same way that you do?
Well, of course, I think a very large proportion of them do on the basis of the mail that I have received, which has been overwhelmingly against the visit. And this includes, of course, my own state of Connecticut, but it has also come from all across this land.
Well, Senator, if you don't want to talk with this man, what in your mind is the alternative?
Well, now, I'm glad you put it that way. I don't know anyone who has suggested that we should not talk to him, and certainly I never have. I believe that we must talk with these people. I know the realities of this situation. What I object to is bringing him here to talk and bringing him as an honored guest to this country, calling on the American people to extend all of their kindnesses and courtesies and niceties and honors to this tyrant who has enslaved vast numbers of people and butchered millions more. I don't think talking requires that. We should talk at the right place, at the right time, and under the proper circumstances.
You keep the negotiations purely diplomatic, would you?
Of course. And I don't think any more is required of us. And I think it is a shame that we have gone further. And I think we'll pay for it, too. You know, I think now at this moment of what might have happened had Chamberlain not gone to Munich. At Nuremberg, we learned that the Potsdam garrison was ready to revolt and overthrow Hitler. But when Chamberlain went to Munich, they gave up, discouraged. There was such a wave of hysteria in Germany that they knew they would not have the support of the German people. Well, I think it's history repeating itself.
Indeed, Senator Dodd, this is the land of liberty, whose statue pointing toward Europe will affront Khrushchev in New York. And in that city, there'll be others to call him tyrant. The large East European refugee colony is organizing protest rallies. Religious groups are active, and newspapers are still using words like bandit and butcher. Some trouble is likely, but massive police reserves will be there to check riots. Khrushchev will also visit the United Nations headquarters and address its General Assembly. Multicolored New York might also give him his best glimpse of America's racial problems, for he's not going to Little Rock. Then he'll fly across to California with its sunlight and orange groves, its great cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco. Los Angeles, with 5 million people, covers the biggest area of any American town, and there he'll see the dynamic and prosperous modern face of the nation. In the suburb called Hollywood, he'll note the survival of the personality cult, that Stalinist heresy. Throughout the tour, his guides will try to explain that he is seeing the real America, not just showpieces to impress tourists. They may find it hard to allay his doubts that it isn't all a facade, with massive slums lurking behind, that the apparent contentment and prosperity of the people isn't just a capitalist conjuring trick. But he did decide himself what to see and what not to see. He won't, for instance, visit any military bases, perhaps because he doesn't want to show any to Ike in Russia in return. In San Francisco, loveliest of American cities, he'll see the Golden Gate Bridge. He'll spend much of his time in California seeing the sights. From there, he'll fly to the Midwest, to Iowa, the leading corn-producing state in America. Will he, like Ruth, be in tears amid all this alien corn when he learns that American agricultural output is 4 times that of Russia, although 4 times more Russians work on the land? He's going to Iowa not only to talk about farming, but to look up an old friend, Farmer Rodwell Gast of Coon Rapids, who has twice visited him in Moscow. Khrushchev and his family will stay the night in the Gasts' farmhouse, and this will certainly be his most intimate contact with typical American home life. A CBS reporter called on the Gasts.
Mr. Gast, when Mr. Khrushchev comes around, just what do you think you'd like to show him on your farm?
Well, I'll show him first an Iowa corn crop that is something. Iowa will this year produce the most bushels of corn of any state in all of history, something above 700 million bushels. Now, I'll show him the way we mechanize our corn, and I'll show him how we mechanize cattle feeding and how we've mechanized hog feeding, and show him how fewer people can raise more food with complete mechanization.
And do you get the idea that he knows pretty well what the United States is about?
I think he knows all about the productiveness of the United States. I think his misconception is largely one of thinking that large corporations in the United States are interested in war and preparation of war in the hopes of greater profits. Complete misconception. I think it's the greatest basic danger in the world, but he thinks that the large corporations are interested in wars.
I guess then you'll be wanting to talk to him about something other than farming when he does get here.
Primarily, I want to talk to him about the importance of reduced armaments, not only here but in the Soviet Union, so that the world can get on with the business of living. Actually, with an explosion in population, 25 or 30 more million people in the world every year, the primary job of the world ought to be better food. And I can't help but think that well-fed people are less likely to be quarrelsome people than underfed people.
Mrs. Gast, it looks as though Mr. Khrushchev will visit your home here in Coon Rapids. If he does come, are you making any special plans on how to feed him or entertain him?
Well, this has come up so suddenly that I haven't made plans as yet, but I'll be able to feed him. I'm not going to do anything very special at all. We are a simple family, and we want him to know how we live.
You met him when you were in the Soviet Union. What were your impressions of him then?
He was a very gracious host, not very difficult to talk to. Of course, I was the lady, the one woman in the group, and had very little chance for conversation. Most of the conversation was about corn, farming, and other things.
Politics?
A little politics. Bob, how in the world did you get me into this anyway?
I don't know.
From your conversation, well, now preparing for Mr. Khrushchev's visit, it looks as though you might be pretty busy with all the arrangements that have to be made. You think you're going to get much time for farming and housework between now and then?
I don't, if it's like having people like you around, I don't think I'm going to get anything done at all.
Actually, I don't think we'll do it.
I don't think we're going to make any special preparations at all.
You'll just make it an ordinary visit.
An ordinary visit, yes.
Which I think he would prefer. I think he would like to see how Americans live without a lot of food.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Gast.
Then from pigs to pig iron, from Iowa to the great steel factories of Pittsburgh, where Khrushchev could learn why it is that America's industrial production is still twice that of Russia. The New York Times has suggested that if Khrushchev could be brought to see for himself the economic might of America, the strength of her way of life, and her workers' faith in it, then he might be more prepared to coexist with capitalism, and world tension would lessen. In Pittsburgh, he'll see that the steel mills have been crippled by strikes since early July. Will this open his eyes to the democratic rights of labor in the West, or will it merely add to his convictions about the unrest of the workers under capitalism? At least he'll have to face the further paradox that the working class, in the form of the trade unions, is one of the groups most hostile to his visit. Patrick O'Donovan sums this up.
The trade union leadership in this country has got itself into a formal position of disapproval. You get the same disapproval, even more bitterly, of course, among the many refugee groups in this country. And many congressmen are politicians, naturally, and so object to the idea of changing old attitudes too quickly or too publicly. But I still believe that a vast majority of this country approves of the President's initiative almost as wholeheartedly as is done now in Britain.
Finally, he called on Congressman Lindsay, a New York Republican, for an average view on whether he thinks it wise to invite Khrushchev.
I definitely do. Why? I can't see that it will do any harm. It conceivably might do some good. I believe very strongly that exchanges at every level should be encouraged rather than discouraged. In my judgment, the American people are intelligent and can judge the results of exchange for themselves. As one of our spokesmen said not long ago, as long as we're talking, we're not shooting. It's said occasionally over here that somehow the American people might be taken in. And to me, that's utter nonsense. That underestimates the intelligence of the American people.
Do you personally believe, Congressman, that any sort of real accommodation is possible with contemporary communism today?
The short answer is yes, but it may take a long, long time. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't have said the things that I said a moment ago. I would not be encouraging exchange of visits between the two countries. I believe, however, very strongly that whatever accommodation eventually is arrived at, that it must be done on a collective basis. That is to say, this country working closely with your own country and with our other friendly neighbors around the face of the earth. And I like fondly, and I perhaps in a minority in suggesting this, I like to think that it would be done through the auspices of the United Nations eventually.